corrupts the mind, that the throne poisons the heart, that no human being can carry the weight of an empire without breaking under the pressure of ambition, ego, fear, and desire. But Marcus Aurelius was different. He did not rise to greatness through conquest or cruelty or the hunger to dominate the world. He rose because he mastered something far more difficult. He mastered himself. Long before the world called him emperor, he understood a truth most people never grasp. A person who cannot govern their own impulses will never govern anything else. A person who cannot rule their own thoughts will never rule their own life. And a person who cannot remain calm in chaos will always be ruled by those who can. Marcus Aurelius became emperor, not because he chased power, but because he attracted it through discipline. His father died when he was young. His teachers were strict. His advisors were flawed. His world was a theater of politics, deception, and constant threat. And yet he moved through it all with a stillness that made others uneasy. He possessed a kind of silence that held weight, a quiet mind that read people more deeply than they read themselves, a gentleness that was stronger than aggression, a composure that made a statement without speaking a word. The historians tell stories of Marcus sitting alone at night under dim candlelight, writing to himself in what would one day become meditations. He never wrote for an audience, never wrote to impress. He wrote to remember who he was. He wrote to correct himself. He wrote to maintain the only throne that mattered, the throne inside his own mind. He understood that the war within is the only war that cannot be avoided. And he fought that war with honesty, humility, and relentless discipline. He said, "You must train your mind to meet life as it is, not as you wish it to be, because the world does not shape itself around your preferences. People do not behave the way you want them to. Events do not unfold according to your hopes. Fate does not negotiate, and yet most people live as if reality owes them comfort. They become angry when something goes wrong, bitter when people disappoint them, fragile when obstacles appear. They collapse emotionally at the first sign of friction." Marcus Aurelius saw this weakness everywhere, and he refused to join it. To him, composure was the highest form of power. Anyone can be calm when life is soft. Anyone can smile when everything goes their way. But true strength is revealed only when the pressure rises, when the storms arrive, when the world becomes hostile and unpredictable. In those moments, a person learns who they are, and Marcus chose to be unshaken. He chose to be immovable. He chose to be still in the middle of the hurricane. People often misunderstand stillness. They think it means passivity. They think it means doing nothing. But the stillness of Marcus Aurelius was not the stillness of inactivity. It was the stillness of command. A general at the center of a battlefield, unmoved by chaos, because his mind is sharper than the noise around him. His stillness was strategy. It was clarity. It was dominance through calm. He believed most people suffer not because of events, but because of their interpretation of events. A rude person offends them. A setback discourages them. A delay frustrates them. A failure crushes them. But Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He refused to give external forces control over his inner life. He refused to let emotions decide his actions. He refused to let anger drag him downward or fear cloud his judgment. When the plague swept through the empire, killing hundreds of thousands, Marcus did not panic. When generals betrayed him, he did not rage. When his own son grew reckless, he did not despair. When Rome's enemies surrounded its borders, he did not crumble. He breathed, analyzed, chose, and acted, always in that order. He had trained himself to respond rather than react. This composure is not born overnight. It is not inherited. It is not genetic. It is built, brick by brick, thought by thought, choice by choice, repetition by repetition. Marcus understood that the mind is a muscle, and like any muscle, it must be trained under stress. It must be pushed. It must be tested. It must be strengthened by friction. That is why he practiced adversity in peace. He rehearsed discomfort so that real discomfort would not break him. He said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." Meaning, you create most of your suffering. Not the world, not other people, not fate. You, your interpretation, your expectations, your refusal to accept reality for what it is. Marcus was not trying to be happy. He was trying to be unshakable. He understood that happiness comes and goes, like weather. But composure is climate. Happiness is an emotion. But composure is a state. Happiness depends on circumstances. But composure depends on character. Marcus was not trying to be comfortable. He was trying to be capable. He was not trying to be admired. He was trying to be disciplined. He was not trying to be liked. He was trying to be true. He lived in a world filled with violence, betrayal, and uncertainty. But he carried himself like a man who had already died to everything except his principles. The world could not seduce him because he did not crave what the world offered: titles, fame, flattery, applause, riches. These were tools, not trophies. They meant nothing if he betrayed his own integrity. He would rather lose the empire than lose himself. This is why he became the emperor of composure. He embodied a rare kind of authority that does not need to shout, a presence that does not need to intimidate, a leadership that does not need to force. His power came from clarity. His authority came from self-control. His influence came from calm. And his calm came from a deep understanding that the universe does not revolve around human desire. It flows according to its own laws. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Most people see obstacles as curses. Marcus saw them as instructions. Most people see adversity as punishment. Marcus saw it as training. Most people wait for perfect conditions. Marcus created progress inside imperfect conditions. His mind did not break under pressure. Pressure sharpened it. He knew that every difficulty contains information. Every conflict contains an opportunity. Every setback contains the blueprint for evolution. He studied discomfort the way a scientist studies nature, carefully, objectively, without panic, without ego. And through this practice, he developed a kind of emotional armor that no external force could penetrate. People feared losing control. Marcus feared losing clarity. People feared chaos. Marcus feared impulsiveness. People feared failure. Marcus feared corruption of character. His priorities were different. And because his priorities were different, his outcomes were different. He ruled the largest empire on earth during one of its most turbulent eras. And yet he refused to let power distort him. He refused to adopt cruelty as policy. He refused to indulge in excess. He refused to punish out of anger. He treated his position as a duty, not a privilege. a responsibility, not a crown. He understood that leadership is not about being above others. It is about being above one's own impulses. The loudest man in the room is not the strongest. The angriest man in the room is not the most powerful. The man who cannot control himself cannot control anything. Marcus Aurelius lived this truth every day. He believed the highest victory is victory over oneself. Not victory over armies, not victory over political rivals, not victory over public opinion, but victory over the mind. Victory over fear. Victory over desire. Victory over anger. Victory over pride. Victory over illusion. This victory cannot be seen. It cannot be photographed. It cannot be displayed like a trophy. But it can be felt. It radiates through a person's presence. It shapes their decisions. It guides their actions. It calms those around them. It inspires trust. It commands respect without demanding it. Marcus Aurelius mastered this victory, and because of that, he remained unbroken. The chaos of the empire did not control him. The storms of the world did not shake him. The betrayals of men did not swallow him. The weight of the crown did not crush him. He carried himself with a stillness that felt ancient, a clarity that felt supernatural, a strength that felt quiet, but enormous. His composure was not coldness, it was power. And through it, he left behind a legacy stronger than marble, stronger than armies, stronger than the empire itself. He left behind a blueprint for unbreakable inner strength. A guide for those who want to stand firm in a world built to shake them. Marcus Aurelius proved that the greatest throne is the throne within, and that the emperor who rules himself cannot be ruled by anything else. Not fear, not failure, not chaos, not fate. The emperor of composure did not conquer the world. He conquered himself. And in doing so, he discovered the one power that can never be taken away. Marcus Aurelius understood something that almost no one today understands. He knew that a person's inner state is not a reaction. It is a creation. Most people allow the world to write their moods for them. One rude word, and they become bitter. One delay, and they become frustrated. One inconvenience, and their entire attitude collapses. They rely on good circumstances to feel stable, which means their stability is never truly theirs. Marcus refused to live like this. He refused to let his emotional life be a slave to external events. He knew that circumstances do not break a person. They reveal them. So he crafted his mind intentionally. He sculpted it with silence. He trained it with discipline. He detoxified it from ego. And through this, he built a fortress inside himself. A fortress so stable that nothing from the outside world could disturb it without his explicit permission. That is why he wrote so often to himself. Not because he was unsure, but because he was building a kingdom inside. A kingdom that no army could invade. A kingdom that no critic could destabilize. A kingdom that no tragedy could touch. He once wrote that you must stand like a rock. The waves crash over you. The storms roar around you. But you remain immovable. Because the real battle is not between you and the world. It is between your mind and its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius did not fear storms. He feared losing himself in them. He did not fear chaos. He feared becoming chaotic. He did not fear suffering. He feared becoming bitter. So he made composure his discipline, as rigorous as the training of a soldier. When he woke each morning, he reminded himself that the day would test him. People would be selfish. People would be unreasonable. People would be ungrateful. But he reminded himself that none of that was personal. It was simply human nature acting according to its own patterns. He expected imperfection. And because he expected it, he was never shocked by it. You cannot be disappointed by behavior you already prepared for. And Marcus Aurelius prepared for everything. He knew preparation is a form of strength. People with no preparation collapse under pressure. People with no preparation take everything personally. People with no preparation allow the smallest adversity to unbalance them. But Marcus treated life like a battlefield. Not a place of fear, but a place where clarity must rise above confusion. Every moment of frustration, he used to practice patience. Every moment of pain, he used to practice endurance. Every moment of disappointment, he used to practice acceptance. In this way, life itself was his training ground, and his composure was the prize earned through relentless internal work. Many rulers lived with constant paranoia. They trusted no one. They slept lightly. They clung to power with desperate hands because they were ruled by fear. But Marcus ruled differently. He ruled from a place of lucidity, a place of inner stillness, a place where power flowed naturally, not through intimidation, but through presence. You can sense when someone has mastered themselves. Their presence changes the air in the room. Marcus carried that presence. Quiet, heavy, focused, controlled. He understood the difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is emotional, automatic, uncontrolled. A response is intentional, measured, strong. Reaction comes from weakness. Response comes from mastery. Marcus never reacted. Even when provoked, insulted, betrayed, or pressured, he responded with clarity. His mind was not a wild horse, it was a disciplined soldier. He wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, meaning your mind becomes the environment you feed it. Most people feed their minds with fear, with noise, with comparisons, with distraction. They let the world paint their inner life with anxiety. Marcus painted his mind with wisdom. He fed himself with the discipline of reason, with the honesty of reflection, with the courage to face truth. And because of this, his soul was dyed with composure. He practiced premeditation of adversity. He imagined loss before it came. Not to hurt himself, but to liberate himself. He believed you should rehearse the things you fear so that when they arrive, you are not paralyzed. This made him almost supernatural in crisis. When others panicked, he was still. When others collapsed, he stood. When others broke, he breathed. This ability is not natural. It is earned. It is carved through philosophy, through introspection, through the humility to confront your own weaknesses. Marcus Aurelius confronted his own mind more fiercely than he confronted any enemy. He examined every desire, every fear, every impulse, every judgment. He knew that self-deception is the true enemy of strength. He wrote that you must stop arguing about what a good man is and be one, meaning action matters more than theory. Principles matter more than opinions. Behavior matters more than words. In a world full of pretenders, Marcus Aurelius valued authenticity above appearance. Many rulers cared more about how they looked than who they were. Marcus cared more about who he was, because he knew that character is the only crown that does not fall. He fought wars not because he wanted to, but because the empire demanded it. And even in war, his composure was legendary. When his troops were exhausted, he remained calm. When supplies ran low, he remained calm. When the enemy grew stronger, he remained calm. Not because he was emotionless, but because he understood that fear is contagious. A leader who panics spreads panic. A leader who remains steady becomes a lighthouse in the storm. His soldiers followed him not because he screamed commands, but because he embodied the strength they aspired to. He was not above them. He was among them. He suffered the same weather, the same mud, the same cold. He slept in tents, not palaces. He remained human while holding the highest title on earth, the power of an emperor with the humility of a philosopher. That combination is rare, and that combination made him unforgettable. He once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This was not advice, it was instruction, an invitation to action. Marcus did not talk about virtue, he practiced it. He did not preach morality, he lived it. And his composure was a reflection of this alignment between action and principle. When your actions align with your values, the mind becomes quiet. When the mind is quiet, composure becomes natural. He understood that most suffering comes from resisting reality, from wishing life were different, from demanding comfort, from seeking fairness in a world that is not fair. Marcus released these illusions. He accepted the world as it was, not as he wanted it to be. And through acceptance, he gained control. You cannot control what you refuse to accept. Acceptance is not surrender. It is the beginning of strategy. Marcus accepted reality so he could shape it with a clear mind. In his writings, he often reminded himself that everything is temporary. Power fades, fame evaporates, wealth dissolves, friends disappear, enemies replace each other. Life itself is fragile. Understanding impermanence gave him freedom. He was not attached to outcomes. He was not enslaved by desire. He was not intoxicated by praise. He was not broken by criticism. He saw life like a river, constantly flowing, never still, always changing. And because he did not cling to anything, nothing could pull him under. He knew that ego is the true enemy of composure, and so he starved his ego daily. He reminded himself that he was dust, that he was mortal, that emperors die just like soldiers, that his body would one day be forgotten and his name would one day fade. This was not depressing to him. It was liberating. When you stop trying to be remembered forever, you start living correctly today. When you stop craving eternal legacy, you start acting with integrity. Marcus Aurelius believed the only legacy that matters is the one you leave in your actions, not in your reputation. He wrote that fame is noise, reputation is wind, glory is illusion, but character is real. Composure is real. Integrity is real. Strength is real. These things cannot be taken from you unless you give them away. His entire life was a practice in letting go. Letting go of anger. Letting go of pride. Letting go of judgment. Letting go of fear. Letting go of desire. Letting go of control. Letting go of the illusion that the world owes you anything. This is why he became unbreakable. Because the world cannot break someone who has let go of everything that can be broken. His composure was not the calm of emptiness. It was the calm of mastery. It was not the silence of weakness. It was the silence of strength. It was not the stillness of resignation. It was the stillness of absolute clarity. He wrote that the mind adapts and converts anything that happens into fuel for its purpose, meaning whatever life throws at you becomes material for growth. Insult becomes practice for patience. Failure becomes practice for perseverance. Suffering becomes practice for endurance. Difficulty becomes practice for intelligence. Loss becomes practice for detachment. In this way, nothing can harm you. Everything becomes useful. Marcus Aurelius did not avoid hardship. He transformed it. He used it. He absorbed it. He turned it into wisdom. And this made him dangerous in the best way. A person who cannot be harmed by adversity becomes untouchable. You take away his comfort, and he grows stronger. You take away his praise, and he grows more disciplined. You take away his support, and he grows more self-reliant. This is the nature of a composed person. They do not collapse when life becomes harsh. They rise, they stand, they stabilize. They do not ask for easier circumstances. They become a stronger version of themselves. The world cannot break them because they understand the world was never meant to make them comfortable. It was meant to shape them. Marcus Aurelius believed the only true wealth is a disciplined mind. The only true power is self-control. The only true freedom is mastery over your own reactions. And the only true failure is surrendering your inner stability to external events. He lived with a kind of emotional independence that made him sovereign long before the crown touched his head. To rule an empire requires courage. To rule yourself requires something far greater. And Marcus Aurelius ruled himself first. That is why he ruled Rome well. You cannot lead others if you cannot lead your own mind. You cannot govern a nation if you are a prisoner to impulse. You cannot protect a people if you are controlled by fear. Marcus Aurelius understood this, and this understanding became the foundation of his composure. He wrote that the universe is change, and life is what your thoughts make of it. With this single idea, he liberated himself from suffering. If life is shaped by your thoughts, then composure is simply the mastery of thoughts. If thoughts create emotion, then emotion is not a prison, but a decision. And if emotion is a decision, then composure is a skill. Marcus practiced this skill every day. Not when it was convenient, not when he felt like it. Every day. He disciplined his mind the way an athlete disciplines the body. Through repetition, through effort, through consistency, through discomfort. And over time, his inner strength became undeniable. His advisors would argue, his generals would panic, his enemies would scheme. But Marcus never drifted. He remained rooted in clarity, rooted in reason, rooted in principle, rooted in a stillness that radiated through his presence. He was the emperor of Rome. But more importantly, he was the emperor of his own mind. That is the true mark of greatness, to rule the outer world through mastery of the inner world, to face chaos without becoming chaotic, to face fire without burning from within, to face adversity without losing your direction. Marcus Aurelius was the embodiment of inner authority, inner stability, inner sovereignty, and from this inner power, he governed the largest empire on earth with a calm that seemed almost divine. He once wrote that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. People think revenge is punishment, but Marcus believed revenge is maintaining your character despite the behavior of others. If someone is cruel, you remain just. If someone is deceitful, you remain honest. If someone is impulsive, you remain disciplined. This is composure. It is the refusal to let darkness turn you into something you are not. Composure is a form of rebellion. A rebellion against chaos. A rebellion against ego. A rebellion against fear. A rebellion against emotional slavery. Marcus Aurelius was a rebel in the quietest possible way. He revolted not against nations, but against the weaknesses of the human mind. And he won. Because of this victory, his writings survive while empires fall. His wisdom lives while palaces crumble. His clarity remains while monuments fade. His composure echoes through time, teaching those who listen how to navigate a world that is relentless, unpredictable, and often merciless. Marcus Aurelius did not teach people how to avoid storms. He taught them how to stand inside storms without losing themselves. He taught them how to remain centered in a reality that is constantly shifting. He taught them how to become unbreakable in a world built to break you. His message is simple but eternal. You do not control what happens. You control how you meet it. You do not control the world. You control your response. And your response is where your power begins. When the world collapses around you, be the pillar that remains standing. When the people around you panic, be the calm voice that sees clearly. When chaos rises, be the steady presence that gives direction. When life becomes unpredictable, become the person who is never shaken. When others break, become the one who bends but does not fall. This is composure. This is mastery. This is the legacy of Marcus Aurelius. And this is the beginning of your own strength. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world that tested every inch of his philosophy. Most people admire stoicism in comfort, but abandon it in crisis. Marcus did the opposite. He practiced it when it mattered, when life was brutal, when war consumed the frontiers, when plague swept through the empire, when betrayal wore familiar faces, when exhaustion crushed the mind and body. And through each of these storms, he wrote calmly to himself, not as an emperor, but as a man struggling to remain whole. His writings were never meant to be published. They were not crafted for admiration. They were reminders to himself. Conversations with his future self. Private instructions for survival. This honesty is why they strike so deeply. Marcus was not pretending to be enlightened. He was trying to remain human in an inhuman situation. That is what makes his composure so powerful. It is not the composure of someone untouched by life. It is the composure of someone touched by everything, yet broken by nothing. He understood that the greatest danger is the internal erosion of character. Empires fall from the inside long before they fall from the outside. People collapse internally long before their lives collapse externally. Marcus refused to let this erosion begin. He reinforced his mind with principles. He reinforced his days with discipline. He reinforced his actions with intention. To him, virtue was not a concept, it was armor. He wrote that if it is endurable, then endure it. This is not denial. It is courage. The courage to face reality without dramatizing it. The courage to handle difficulty without surrendering to despair. The courage to remain upright even when everything around you leans toward chaos. Marcus did not believe in running from pain. He believed in meeting it with strength. He often reminded himself that he was stronger than he believed. Not because he was emperor, but because he was human. The nature of humanity, he thought, is resilience. People forget their own strength because they drown in emotion. Marcus sought to rise above emotion without rejecting it. He did not aim to be cold. He aimed to be clear. When he experienced grief, he let it pass through him without letting it control him. When he faced fear, he acknowledged it without letting it dictate his choices. When anger flared inside him, he observed it like a flame that burns out quickly when not fed. He wrote that anger is a form of weakness, not because emotion is weakness, but because losing control is weakness. A person ruled by anger is a person unable to command themselves. Marcus believed that you cannot control the world, but you can control what it means to you. This is the foundation of composure. Not the absence of pain, but the mastery of meaning. Two people can face the same difficulty. One collapses because they interpret it as an attack. The other rises because they interpret it as a challenge. Marcus belonged to the second group. He did not romanticize suffering. He simply refused to let suffering define him. This is why he was respected more after his death than during his life. People later realized the weight he carried and the grace with which he carried it. The grace of someone who sees clearly. The grace of someone whose spirit cannot be shaken. He once wrote that the only thing you truly own is your mind. Everything else can be taken from you. Your wealth, your reputation, your relationships, your health, your power, but your inner state is yours to command. People spend their entire lives trying to control what they cannot. Marcus spent his life mastering what he could. He practiced stillness in the middle of noise. He practiced clarity in the middle of confusion. He practiced virtue in the middle of corruption. He practiced calm in the middle of chaos. He practiced focus in the middle of distraction. This is why his presence radiated strength, not loud strength, quiet strength. The kind of strength that does not announce itself, the kind of strength that cannot be removed because it is not external. Many rulers used fear to control others. Marcus used reason to control himself. This is a different kind of power, deeper, more sustainable, more respected. Others ruled with threats. Marcus ruled with example. Others demanded obedience. Marcus earned loyalty. Others placed themselves above the people. Marcus placed duty above himself. He lived as if the throne were temporary, but virtue were eternal. This perspective liberated him from ego. When you realize that titles vanish, you stop attaching your identity to them. When you understand that praise dissolves, you stop chasing it. When you accept that legacy fades, you stop performing for history. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that his life was loaned, not owned. This humility shaped his leadership. He never let power intoxicate him because he saw how fragile it was. He wrote that the universe is like a river flowing endlessly, and no matter how great you are a drop in that river. Not in a way that diminishes you, but in a way that frees you. Because when you stop trying to be permanent, you start focusing on what truly matters. He valued justice. Not justice as punishment, but justice as fairness. He valued courage. Not the courage of war, but the courage of endurance. He valued wisdom. Not the wisdom of intellect alone, but the wisdom of perspective. He valued temperance. Not denial of pleasure, but mastery of desire. These four virtues formed the skeleton of his character. And composure was the flesh on that skeleton. When people approached him with problems, he listened without absorbing their panic. He did not allow others to pull him into their storms. He remained the stillness that others navigated around. This is leadership at its highest form. Not domination, not aggression, but stability. He understood that composure is strength disguised as silence. The absence of chaos inside you becomes the presence of power around you. People feel it, they sense it, they adjust their behavior instinctively. This is influence at its purest form. Influence without force. Influence without manipulation. Influence born from self-mastery. Marcus often reflected on mortality, not as fear, but as clarity. Knowing life ends sharpens attention. It strips away pettiness. It reveals what is essential. It makes anger seem foolish. It makes ego seem heavy. It makes worry seem wasteful. It makes composure seem wise. When you realize that everything is temporary, you stop allowing temporary things to control you. He reminded himself that life is neither good nor bad. It is neutral. It becomes what your mind makes of it. This radical responsibility transformed him from a man pressured by fate into a man guided by internal authority. When you accept that everything is interpretation, you gain freedom. Because then you can choose the interpretation that strengthens you. Marcus Aurelius was not detached from life. He was engaged, but not consumed. He loved his family deeply. He cared about the empire sincerely. He bore responsibility heavily. But he did not let attachment become shackles. He held everything with an open hand. This openness prevented suffering from turning into despair. When things slipped from his hand, he accepted that they were never truly his. This understanding made him gentle, not bitter, compassionate, not cold. But even his compassion was disciplined. He did not pity people, he empathized with them. He did not carry their burdens for them. He reminded them of their own strength. He did not collapse under the weight of expectation. He stood firmly, offering stability instead of appeasement. He wrote that the obstacle becomes the way. He meant that adversity is not a wall blocking your path. It is the path. Your composure is forged in resistance, in difficulty, in discomfort, in uncertainty. The more you face adversity with clarity, the stronger you become, the calmer you become, the more unshakable you become. Marcus Aurelius never expected an easy life. He expected a meaningful one. Meaning is found in responsibility. Meaning is found in service. Meaning is found in discipline. Meaning is found in mastery. Meaning is found in self-control. Meaning is found in the ability to stand firm when the world shakes. He believed that life is a series of problems, and your character is measured by how you meet them. Anyone can be calm when life is gentle. True composure is measured when life is cruel. Anyone can be patient when things go their way. True patience is tested when they do not. Anyone can be kind when they are respected. True kindness is shown when you are provoked. Marcus Aurelius knew that your worth is not determined by what happens to you, but by the strength with which you respond. This strength is not loud. It does not seek attention. It does not announce itself. It is quiet. It is internal. It is steady. His life was filled with burdens, but he wore them with dignity. His words were filled with discipline, but they were also filled with humanity. He never claimed perfection. He simply refused to collapse. And this refusal changed the course of history. This composure is available to you, not through inspiration, through discipline, not through motivation, through practice, not through fantasy, through reality. When you begin to master your reactions, you begin to control your life. When you stop allowing circumstance to dictate your mood, you begin to lead yourself. Marcus Aurelius teaches that your power begins the moment you choose stability over impulse, clarity over chaos, response over reaction, principle over preference. This is the strength of the composed, the strength of the disciplined, the strength of the sovereign mind. This is the strength you can build. Marcus Aurelius understood that the world is full of noise. People talk endlessly, yet say nothing. They argue constantly, yet understand little. They rush through life without ever stopping to examine their own minds. Noise becomes their master. Impulse becomes their guide. Chaos becomes their identity. Marcus refused this fate. He carved out silence in a world drowning in sound. He cultivated stillness where others cultivated drama. He guarded his mind with the same vigilance others guarded their possessions. To him, the most valuable real estate in life was attention, and he refused to waste it. He wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. This was a warning. Your mind is not neutral. It is always becoming something. Either you shape it or the world shapes it for you. Either you direct your thoughts or your thoughts drag you. Either you choose your focus or your focus is stolen. Marcus trained his mind the way a warrior trains the body. Deliberately, repeatedly, relentlessly. He understood that the things you think about all day are the things you eventually become. Most people fill their minds with resentment, comparison, fear, and distraction. They wonder why they crumble. They wonder why they are anxious. They wonder why they feel weak. Marcus filled his mind with reason, discipline, acceptance, and clarity. And because he fed his mind strength, strength emerged. He also believed that suffering intensifies when you resist reality, when you demand that life be different, when you cling to expectations that are shattered by truth. Marcus accepted life as a whole, not the parts he liked, the whole. He embraced the unpredictable. He accepted the inevitable. He carried his duties, not with resentment, but with resolve. A resolve forged through the understanding that resistance to reality is resistance to growth. When his men betrayed him, he examined his own part in their disappointment. When illness struck him, he focused on what he could still do, not on what he had lost. When others spoke poorly of him, he reminded himself that people judge from their own limitations, not from truth. He practiced emotional sovereignty. He refused to let external storms dictate his internal climate. This sovereignty made him untouchable, not in the arrogant sense, in the disciplined sense. People who tried to provoke him found only calm. People who tried to manipulate him found only clarity. People who tried to intimidate him found only presence. He had mastered the art of inner quiet, and that quiet was more powerful than armies. He believed that true power is the ability to remain the same person regardless of circumstance. Anyone can be pleasant in comfort. Anyone can be noble in abundance. Anyone can be patient in peace. But when life turns dark, character reveals itself. The world sees who you are when pressure is applied. Marcus welcomed that pressure because he believed it purified the mind. He often reminded himself that one day he would die. He did not fear this. He used it. He saw death as a lens through which every moment becomes sharp, urgent, essential. When you remember death, you stop wasting time on trivial distractions. You stop clinging to petty conflicts. You stop chasing empty desires. You stop bending to every emotional impulse. Death clarifies life. And Marcus used this clarity to strengthen his composure. He did not obsess over legacy. He believed legacy was smoke, carried by the winds of someone else's memory. Instead, he cared about the quality of his actions in the present. He knew that if the present was righteous, the future would take care of itself. He refused to poison the moment with fantasies of the future or regrets of the past. The present was his battlefield. The present was his duty. He believed that composure is not a mood, it is a skill. And like any skill, it must be trained. He trained it through reflection, through journaling, through contemplation, through repeated exposure to discomfort. He often wrote that the essence of training is repetition, not intensity. Repetition. The daily correction of the mind, the daily pruning of illusions, the daily strengthening of perspective. This is how inner authority is built. He also believed that the world was indifferent, not hostile, indifferent. This is a crucial distinction. If the world is hostile, you must live in fear. If the world is indifferent, you must live with awareness. Marcus saw life as a field of opportunity, not a battlefield of persecution. The events of life are not sent to harm you. They simply occur. Your interpretation determines whether you suffer. He knew that the human tendency is to exaggerate pain, dramatize challenges, and create unnecessary misery. He disciplined his mind away from this instinct. When something went wrong, he did not say, "Why did this happen to me?" He said, "Why should this not happen to me? Who am I to be exempt from the universal conditions of life?" This humbled him. It also strengthened him. He became resilient, not because life was gentle, but because he chose to meet life without entitlement. Marcus Aurelius believed that control begins with awareness. You cannot control what you refuse to examine. You cannot correct what you refuse to acknowledge. He watched his thoughts the way a guard watches the gates of a fortress. He allowed no intruders, no thoughts that weakened him, no fantasies that distorted reality, no fears that exaggerated danger, no bitterness that poisoned the heart. He practiced mental hygiene, clearing out what did not serve him. This awareness also allowed him to understand people deeply. He did not expect perfection from others. He believed that to be human is to be flawed. When someone wronged him, he asked himself what ignorance or suffering inside them caused their behavior. This compassion protected him from hatred. Hatred distorts judgment. He refused to let his mind be clouded. He needed clarity to lead. He needed clarity to remain principled. Hatred is noise. Marcus avoided noise. He once wrote that you should meet unkindness with justice, not anger. This does not mean letting people walk over you. It means acting according to principle rather than emotion. It means maintaining your standard, even when others lose theirs. It means responding from strength rather than reacting from impulse. Marcus Aurelius also believed that life is too short for envy. He refused to begrudge others their success or freedom or fortune. Envy is comparison. Comparison is distraction. And distraction is weakness. He understood that people who envy others lose themselves. They stop tending to their own garden because they are busy measuring someone else's. Marcus tended to his own garden with absolute diligence. He was surrounded by wealth, luxury, and indulgence, yet he lived simply. He slept on a hard bed, ate plain food, wore modest clothing at home. He did not reject comfort, he simply refused to depend on it. Dependence creates vulnerability. He did not want anything external to have power over him. His strength came from resilience, not abundance. He believed that people fear discomfort because they have never trained themselves to endure it. But discomfort is the sculptor of character. It sharpens discipline. It strengthens perspective. It makes composure possible. Without discomfort, composure becomes fragile. A person sheltered from adversity collapses at the first sign of stress. Marcus embraced adversity, not with joy, with acceptance. He often reminded himself that suffering comes from wanting the world to be comfortable. Peace comes from wanting the mind to be strong. Marcus chose strength, and because he chose strength, he became peace. The kind of peace no one could take from him. The kind of peace that can stand in fire without burning. He saw himself not as emperor, but as a man serving a role. He believed that roles come and go. But character is permanent. Titles expire. Integrity does not. He wrote that if you lose yourself, you lose everything. This was not philosophy. It was instruction, a rule for survival. Marcus Aurelius faced war, plague, political betrayal, personal loss, constant travel, and the crushing weight of responsibility. And yet, he remained calm. Not because he was unaffected, because he was trained. He trained himself to meet life with stability, to meet chaos with clarity, to meet uncertainty with acceptance, to meet pressure with composure. This composure is not unique to him. It is available to you through discipline, through reflection, through self-control, through acceptance of what you cannot change, and mastery of what you can. When you build composure, life becomes simpler, not easier, simpler. Because you stop fighting reality. You start working with it. Marcus Aurelius believed that each person carries within them a potential greatness. Not the greatness of fame, the greatness of character, the greatness of clarity, the greatness of calm, the greatness of strength under pressure. He believed that the world cannot break a person who has mastered themselves. That is why he focused on the inner throne, not the outer one. This is why he wrote his meditations, not to inspire others, to preserve himself. And yet, centuries later, those private writings have become a guide for millions. Proof that the most powerful message is the message you write for yourself. Proof that true mastery leaves echoes. Proof that quiet strength is louder than noise. Proof that composure is the highest form of power. Marcus Aurelius has nothing left to teach the world except this. You are not defeated by what happens. You are defeated by how you respond. Master the response, and you master your life. Marcus Aurelius believed that every day was a chance to strengthen the inner citadel, a fortress not built of stone, but of discipline, a defense not against enemies, but against the undisciplined mind. He wrote that the mind adapts and converts everything that happens into fuel. This was not optimism, it was strategy. If everything becomes fuel, nothing becomes poison. If everything becomes useful, nothing becomes crippling. If everything becomes information, nothing becomes intimidation. He saw obstacles not as barriers, but as raw material, the same way a sculptor sees marble, the same way a warrior sees resistance, the same way a philosopher sees contradiction. Every difficulty was clay in his hands, something he could mold, interpret, transform. Most people bend under pressure. Marcus bent pressure itself. He understood that chaos is not an interruption of life. Chaos is part of life. And composure is not the absence of chaos. It is the ability to remain whole while standing inside it. The storms will not stop. People will not stop disappointing. The world will not stop shifting. But the disciplined mind does not fracture. It adjusts. It absorbs. It rebounds. It continues. Marcus Aurelius refused to allow frustration to govern his actions. He refused to allow anger to waste his energy. He refused to allow anxiety to cloud his judgment. He had responsibilities too heavy for emotional impulsiveness. He knew that the empire depended on his stability. That soldiers drew strength from his calm. That senators took direction from his clarity. That citizens watched his example. His composure was not just for himself. It radiated outward. He wrote that waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. This was his philosophy in motion. He believed action revealed character more than words ever could. Philosophy meant nothing without practice. Virtue meant nothing without implementation. Wisdom meant nothing without discipline. Every day he applied what he wrote, and every day he corrected what he failed to live. He saw each moment as a test, not an exam to pass, a test to refine, a test to expose weakness, a test to strengthen resolve. He did not fear being tested. He welcomed it. Because a life without tests produces a character without depth, without resilience, without substance. People who avoid difficulty remain fragile. People who face it become forged. Marcus Aurelius was forged, not born strong, forged strong. Through repetition, through reflection, through choosing principle over impulse, through choosing responsibility over comfort, through choosing duty over desire. He understood that strength is not something you show. It is something you carry. A quiet pressure inside the chest. A calm weight in the mind. A stable center that does not depend on anything outside of itself. Marcus built this center deliberately, word by word, choice by choice, day by day. He wrote that, just as a fire takes whatever you throw into it and turns it into flame, so should the mind take whatever life throws at it and turn it into strength. This was the fire inside him. Not a fire of anger, a fire of purpose, a fire of discipline, a fire of clarity. Marcus knew that people often live as victims of their emotions, victims of their thoughts, victims of their expectations. They imprison themselves mentally long before life ever challenges them physically. Marcus refused to be a prisoner. He freed himself by mastering his perception. He practiced detachment not to escape life, but to see it clearly, to see people without illusion, to see events without exaggeration, to see himself without ego. Detachment gave him accuracy. Accuracy gave him calm. Calm gave him power. He believed that people suffer because they expect life to be fair. But fairness is a human desire, not a natural law. Nature does not bend itself to emotion. The river does not widen because someone wishes it were easier to cross. The storm does not soften because someone is afraid. Marcus accepted nature as it was. This acceptance made him strong. His life was full of contradictions. He was emperor, yet he saw himself as a servant. He had absolute power, yet he restrained himself more tightly than anyone else. He commanded armies, yet he spent more time commanding his mind. These contradictions formed his greatness. He reminded himself daily that he was a human being, that he was temporary, that he was flawed, that he was capable of error. This humility grounded him. It prevented arrogance. It prevented delusion. It kept his ego in check. He believed ego was the greatest enemy, not external enemies. Internal ego. Marcus refused to let praise intoxicate him. He refused to let criticism destabilize him. He refused to be owned by the opinions of others. Most people spend their lives trying to please applause. Marcus saw applause as noise. He believed that you must live by your own standard, not the standards of the crowd. He also believed in simplicity, not minimalism as a trend. Simplicity as a form of purity. He removed excess wherever it weakened him. Excess in emotion, excess in desire, excess in luxury, excess in thought. The simpler the mind, the clearer the path. The clearer the path, the stronger the action. He saw people chasing comfort with desperation, chasing validation with urgency, chasing pleasure with obsession. And yet, these same people were unhappy. Marcus understood why. Comfort without discipline weakens the will. Pleasure without purpose empties the soul. Validation without self-respect collapses identity. Marcus replaced these with strength, with meaning, with virtue. The Emperor of Composure did not need calm conditions to remain calm. He generated calm internally. He created it. He sustained it. He embodied it. This is the reason he stood out. Anyone can appear strong when life is gentle. Marcus remained strong when life was brutal. His wife died. His children died. His friend betrayed him. His health deteriorated. His empire suffered. Yet through all of this, he wrote to himself with clarity. He reminded himself to remain kind, to remain just, to remain honest, to remain disciplined, to remain calm. This is why he is remembered. Not because he ruled, because he ruled himself. He believed that the mind is everything. If the mind collapses, everything collapses. If the mind stands firm, anything is endurable. The mind is the first battlefield, and the last one. Marcus fought that battle with discipline, and he won. His philosophy was not abstract, it was practical, direct, grounded. He believed that you should deal with the present moment honestly and completely, without fantasizing about the future or mourning the past. The present moment contains everything you need to do your duty. That was his anchor. He knew that people waste their lives fighting imaginary fears, imagining negative outcomes, creating pain that does not yet exist. He avoided this mental habit completely. He focused only on what was real, only on what was in front of him, only on what he could influence. Everything else was noise. Marcus Aurelius was not superhuman. He simply refused to live at the mercy of chaos. This refusal became his strength. This refusal became his power. This refusal became his legacy. And the truth is that you can choose the same refusal. You can build the same strength, the same clarity, the same composure. It is not a gift. It is a discipline. The world will test you. People will challenge you. Events will shake you. Emotions will tempt you. But if you strengthen the inner citadel, Nothing can break you. Not permanently, not deeply, not truly. Marcus Aurelius proved that the strongest force in the world is a calm mind. Because the calm mind sees clearly, the clear mind acts effectively. The effective mind lives powerfully, and the powerful mind cannot be owned by external chaos. This is the essence of the Emperor of Composure. Marcus Aurelius knew that everything in life fades. The victories, the failures, the praise, the criticism, the joy, the sorrow, the throne, the body, the empire. Even memory dissolves eventually. And yet, he lived as if there was one thing that could outlast all of it. Not marble, not gold, not monuments, but the strength of one's character. He believed that a person's soul becomes stronger when they choose discipline over desire, when they choose clarity over impulsiveness, when they choose responsibility over escape, when they choose composure over chaos. And he built his life on this truth. In the final years of his reign, Marcus Aurelius was tired. His body was failing. His enemies grew bold. His political allies were few. His responsibilities were endless. But he never surrendered his internal posture. He never collapsed into self-pity. He never allowed bitterness to take root. His composure became even deeper, even quieter, even more dignified. He wrote that you should not act as if you had 10,000 years to live. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. Good not in the shallow sense, good in the disciplined sense, good in the principled sense, good in the way that strengthens the mind and refines the soul. To him, goodness meant living with integrity even when no one sees. It meant treating others with dignity even when they do not deserve it. It meant holding yourself to a high standard even when the world does not. It meant living with honesty, courage, patience, and humility. These virtues were his compass. He believed that everything you do echoes inside your own mind. If you act out of anger, that anger stains you. If you act out of fear, that fear rules you. If you act out of ego, that ego blinds you. But if you act from principle, principle becomes your guide. If you act from clarity, clarity becomes your armor. If you act from composure, composure becomes your nature. In the end, Marcus Aurelius understood that true power is not the ability to dominate others. True power is the ability to remain aligned with your values under pressure, to remain steady in the storms of life, to remain calm when the world is shaking, to remain disciplined when everyone else breaks. He knew the empire would eventually fall. All empires do. But he also knew that the example of a disciplined mind would last far longer than the empire's marble walls. And he was right. Centuries after his death, people still read his private thoughts, still draw strength from his words, still study his composure, still feel the presence of his mind. His life became a reminder that greatness is not loud, greatness is not flamboyant, greatness is not hungry for recognition, greatness is silent, greatness is internal. Greatness is the mastery of one's own nature. Greatness is the ability to stand firm without shouting, to lead without forcing, to endure without complaining, to remain calm without retreating. Marcus Aurelius lived this greatness, and he paid for it with self-control, with discipline, with constant reflection, with the willingness to see himself clearly and correct himself daily. That is the price of composure. That is the price of mastery. That is the price of power. At the very end, when he knew his death was near, he told those around him not to mourn. He told them to continue the work, to continue living with discipline, to continue serving with humility. He did not cling to life. He did not cling to the throne. He did not cling to recognition. He had already detached from everything external. He had become sovereign inside himself. And that is the lesson he leaves for you. When the world becomes loud, become silent. When the world becomes chaotic, become steady. When the world becomes angry, become calm. When the world becomes uncertain, become grounded. When life becomes heavy, become disciplined. When people disappoint you, remain principled. When fate shifts, remain aligned. When your path darkens, carry your own light. Composure is not the absence of storms. Composure is the refusal to be moved by them. The Emperor of Composure did not conquer the world. He conquered himself. And in doing so, he found the only power that cannot be taken. Your life will not be measured by what you accumulate. It will be measured by the strength of the mind you build, the calm you embody, the discipline you practice, the virtues you live, the storms you withstand without losing yourself. Marcus Aurelius is long gone. His empire is dust. His throne is silent. His battles have ended. But his composure lives on through every person who chooses strength over reaction, clarity over chaos, and principle over impulse. You carry that possibility. You carry that discipline. You carry that throne inside you. No one can rule it except you. Rule it well. Rule it with calm. Rule it with courage. Rule it with clarity. Rule it with composure. And you too will become what he became. Not an emperor of land, but an emperor of mind, an emperor of self, an emperor of composure. This is the legacy Marcus Aurelius leaves you. A legacy you can live, a legacy you can embody, a legacy that begins now.